Welcome back to Bikes with Ben. If you've been riding your bike for any amount of time, you've likely encountered creaks along the way. Now these creaks can be notoriously hard to track down, and I once replaced every bearing on my full suspension mountain bike, only to find out that it was the pedals causing the creak. In this case though, I think I've isolated the creak to the headset, so stay tuned for my simple step-by-step guide on how to re-grease your headset bearings and get your bike sounding like new. Step 1 is to remove your front brake lever so it can fall away from the bike with the fork. If you got the newer style Shimano brakes, there is a push to release lever on the inside here. Make sure you're not putting any opening pressure on the clamp. Push that button and it'll open fully to allow you to remove the brake without taking off your grip. Step 2 is to remove the stem cap here. Next, we'll loosen the stem itself so that we can pull the fork off the bike. Okay, now that the stem is loose, we can pull the handlebars up and bring the fork down. Don't lose your spacers. You'll need them to put it back together. Now it's time to clean those bearings. Get a paper towel. I like to use these blue shop towels and clean all the grease that you can find. It's okay to use a little bit of rubbing alcohol here and there to get off spots that are tougher to remove. We are not removing the grease from inside of these bearings. These are sealed bearings. You can see the blue seal here, and they have grease inside of them. We are only looking to re-grease the outside of these bearings with the fork touches, so hopefully we can reduce the creak sounds that the fork is making against the bearing. It's good to check these bearings while you're in here and make sure they're smooth and don't have too much grit or locked up areas on them. These seem pretty good. If your headset doesn't look like this, there are a million different types of headsets, and in general, all the same cleaning procedures and re-greasing procedures apply, but double check what you have if it looks different from this, just to make sure you're doing the right thing. Next, we just want to clean up our fork to make sure all of the grease and debris is off it as well. Now that everything is nice and clean, it's time to apply our grease. Now any general purpose grease should do the job just fine here. All we're trying to do is to eliminate that metal on metal surfaces to prevent it from creaking and also prevent some water ingress to prevent it from rusting. I like to use this Super Lube. It's cheap, it's a multi-purpose synthetic grease. It comes in a nice tube like this. You don't need much here, and I found that wearing a glove helps keep the mess cleanup down. All you're gonna do is apply the grease to anywhere you can think the surfaces will touch something else. So the inside of these bearings will be touching the fork, the top of these bearings will be touching the stem, and the bottom of these bearings will be touching the bottom of the fork. Make sure to put a small dab here along the upper surface that's going to touch the lower race of that bottom bearing on your fork. Now we should be good to go and get back to assembly. Now before we put the fork back on, we have to remember to put in our fittings and spacers that came with the headset. Let's take the fork, run it up through the center here. Make sure our spacers and fittings stay on it. We will then install the stem like so. Grab our couple spacers and our stem cap. Before we go and tighten the stem, we want to make sure to tighten the stem cap to put a little bit of preload on the bearings. We're going to make sure our fork is fully lifted up. We're going to tighten this down to close everything up. And we only need to put about 1 to 2 Newton meters on this. This is very light torque. If you go too hard, you're going to end up cranking your bearings down and could damage them. If you go too loose, you're going to have some slop in your headset. Next, we want to eye up the handlebars and make sure they're straight with the wheel. This can be kind of tricky to do on the bench. You can get it close though and then adjust once you're on the bike. This looks pretty good. Now we can tighten down our stem bolts. These will have a torque rating typically written on the headset, in this case 5.5 Newton meters. Now it's time to reattach our brake lever. Again, this Shimano safety lock has locked back on us. Make sure that there is no opening pressure that you're putting onto it or the lock won't work. Press that button and it will open right up. Put this back. I tend to take a picture of where I had this so that I remember. I do know I was right at that line, right about there. And there you have it, a freshly lubed and ideally creak-free headset, and all it cost you was 8 or 10 bucks for a tube of super lube and the time it took you to watch this video. If you like these videos and want to see more like them, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. I'll do my best to get back to you. Until next time, get out there and ride, have some fun, and I'll see you guys again on the next episode of Bikes with Ben. Think that'll work?